My coworker didn't steal my promotion or scream at me in front of the whole office. She did something smaller, quieter, and for some reason it hurt a lot more. She scheduled her big career-defining presentation on the exact same day as mine. That doesn't sound like a crime, I know. On paper, it could even be a coincidence. But if you've ever worked in an office where the calendar is a battlefield, you already know. People don't double book by accident. Not when the whole leadership team only gives you 1 hour a quarter to pitch. The story really starts 3 months before that, sitting in a conference room that always smelled like burnt coffee and whiteboard markers. I'd been at the company for 5 years, mid-level project manager. Not a superstar, not dead weight. Just the guy they trusted to fix the things other people broke. This time, they didn't want me to fix something. They wanted me to build it. Ethan, we're giving you the Q4 Efficiency Initiative, my manager Paul said, sliding a folder across the table. If this goes well, it's your shot at senior. You know that, right? He didn't say it like a promise, more like a diagnosis. I just nodded, fingers on the edge of the folder so he wouldn't see them shake. Inside were numbers. Too many. Delivery times, budget overruns, vendor delays. 3 years of the company bleeding money in slow motion. My job was to go into that mess, find a way to stop the bleeding, and then stand in front of the director group and convince them to actually change. It was the kind of project that either puts your name on a door or on a layoff list. I walked out of that room with the folder under my arm and a knot in my chest. On the way back to my desk, I passed her. Marissa. She was leaning against the end of the sales pod, nails tapping her phone, laughing at something on Slack with 2 of the reps. Blonde, sharp blazer, the kind of heels you can't actually walk fast in, but somehow she did. She'd joined the company a year after me and climbed faster. Different department, same ladder. Big boy meeting? She asked, raising an eyebrow as I passed. Something like that, I said. I didn't stop walking. At that point, we were fine. Not friends, not enemies. Just 2 people who understood we were orbiting the same promotion. She liked to call me Spreadsheet Jesus when I pulled off a difficult report. I pretended it didn't annoy me. For the next few weeks, my life narrowed. Office, home, numbers, repeat. I stayed late, came in early, lived on bad coffee and takeout. I sat in empty conference rooms with my laptop, building slide decks that tried to compress chaos into clean charts. I interviewed supervisors from logistics, asked quiet questions in the warehouse, listened to people who never got invited upstairs. At home, my girlfriend, Lena, watched me drag my work bag to the kitchen table every night. This is going to kill you, she said once, putting a bowl of pasta next to my laptop. If it goes right, it might do the opposite, I answered. Promotion? Maybe, I said. I didn't say the part where I had already imagined my name in a bigger font under Senior Project Manager on the internal directory. You don't say those things out loud, you just work. By the time I had a draft of the presentation, I actually felt proud. It told a story. Not just we're failing, but here's why. Here's how to fix it. Here's what it buys us. Paul reviewed it twice, made a few notes, and finally said the sentence I'd been waiting for. All right, let's get you on the Q4 slot. At our company, those slots were gold. Once a quarter, the leadership team blocked off a 2-hour window called Strategic Spotlight. 2 projects got to go in front of them. 2. Everyone else waited for email feedback that never came. Paul opened his calendar while I sat there. Looks like the exec team only has 1 spotlight in December, he muttered. All right, December 3rd, 10 to 12. I'll put you in for the first hour. He typed, clicked, and there it was on the giant colorful grid that ruled all our lives. Strategic Spotlight, Operations Efficiency. Presenter, Ethan Cole. I stared at it like it was a winning lottery ticket. The invite went out to the usual list. Director Group, VP, a couple of stakeholder teams. My name on all of them. I forwarded it to Lena that night with a simple line. This is the one. For about a week, everything felt steady. Stressful, but steady. I polished the slides, rehearsed in my head on the train, recorded myself once, and hated the sound of my own voice enough to do it again. I blocked off my calendar the day before as focus time and ignored every social thing at work that wasn't directly related. Then on a random Tuesday afternoon, I was refilling my water bottle when I heard it. Yeah, I'm finally getting a spotlight too. December 3rd. It was Marissa's voice floating from the break room. My hand froze on the tap. I walked in casually, like I just needed ice. She was at the counter talking to one of the sales guys, Nate, stirring sugar into her coffee. Big day, she was saying. Marketing initiative rollout. They said it could be the template for next year. Nate whistled. Nice. Execs and everything. Full group, she said, smiling. 9 to 10. I checked the clock on the wall like it could have changed physics. 3:17 p.m. My calendar was still open on my screen at my desk. I knew exactly what it looked like. Wait, I said, keeping my tone light. December 3rd? You're presenting too? She turned like she'd just now noticed I was there. Oh, yeah. She gave me a bright, innocent smile. Funny, right? Guess it's a big day for both of us. What's your slot? I asked, already knowing I'd hate the answer. 9 to 10, she repeated. Why? I opened my phone, pulled up the calendar right there in front of the refrigerator. My invite stared back. Strategic Spotlight. Operations Efficiency. 10 a.m. 11 a.m. I looked up slowly. You're before me. Well, she said, shrugging. Somebody has to open the show. On the surface, it was nothing. 2 different departments, back to back. But anyone who'd been through one of these spotlights knew how it actually worked. The execs came in hot at 9, half of them still thinking about their own meetings. They settled. They listened. By 10:30, phones came out. By 10:45, someone had to jump for another call. The second presenter always bled audience. It wasn't the schedule that bothered me. It was how fast she'd gotten that slot. When did you get your invite? I asked. She tapped her nail against her mug, thinking. Yesterday, I think, she said. Sarah pulled me into a room, said she wanted marketing represented. They were adjusting the agenda. Yesterday, I'd had my invite for 12 days. I went back to my desk, opened my email, and scrolled. There it was, a forwarded thread between Paul and the VP. Let's put Ethan first at 9, Paul had written. Underneath, from the VP, dated 4 days later. Actually, marketing requested a slot for their initiative. Let's bump Ethan to 10 so we can get the acquisition strategy in front of the full group. He'll still get solid time. No one had told me I'd been moved. They'd just shifted me down the line. I stared at that email for a long time. Not angry, just cold. Then I did something stupid. I opened our internal messaging app and typed to Marissa. Congrats on the spotlight, I wrote. Looks like we're sharing the morning, she replied in under 10 seconds. Guess may the best deck win, she wrote. Just a joke, right? Just coworkers. Just friendly competition. But that line sat in my chest the rest of the day like a stone, because I knew something she didn't know I knew. This wasn't the first time a project of hers had landed exactly where someone else had been working for months. For the next 2 days, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. People reschedule things all the time. Agendas shift. Leadership has priorities I'll never see. Maybe it was inconvenient. Maybe it was unlucky. Maybe it was nothing. That illusion lasted until Wednesday morning. I came in early, like I always did these days. The office was still half asleep, lights buzzing awake, the smell of fresh carpet cleaner clinging to the halls. I dropped my bag at my desk and opened my laptop. The first thing I saw was a notification, shared drive, access revoked. Ops efficiency, Q4 presentation draft. My stomach tightened. That folder was mine. My slides, my notes, my compiled research. No one should have touched it except Paul. I clicked the notification details. Access revoked by M. Reynolds. Marissa. At 7:13 a.m., I swallowed hard. walked over to her desk, empty. Of course, she never showed up before 9 unless there was free pastry involved. I looked around the open space like I'd find a camera, someone laughing, something that made this make sense. Nothing. So I walked to the one person who would know. Sarah, our operations coordinator, keeper of the scheduling keys, the person who could lock down a whole department with 2 clicks. She was pouring coffee when I stepped into her small office. "Morning," I said. She looked up, pinched a smile. "Hey, Ethan, you're early as always." I turned my laptop toward her. Why was my access revoked? And why by marketing? Her eyebrows inched up. Marketing? They don't have permissions on ops folders. She took the laptop from me, clicked a few windows. Her eyes narrowed. Huh, that's strange. Strange. The corporate word for bad. She kept clicking. Her voice dropped. Looks like someone extended permissions last week and didn't lock them back down. So she could access it? For a few days, yes. She paused. But she also removed you. You're the owner, so she shouldn't have been able to. I didn't realize my hands were clenched until she glanced at them. "I'll restore it," she said quickly, "and I'll flag the permissions audit to IT. But Ethan, be careful. These spotlights bring out the worst in people." I forced a smile I didn't feel. "Yeah, thanks." Back at my desk, I opened the folder. Slides intact. Notes intact. Nothing obviously changed. But the violation wasn't about damage. It was about message. She wanted me to know she could get into my work, and I wanted to believe that was the end of it, but that was just the beginning. At 9:25, Paul called me into a small meeting room. He had the look of a man forcing calm. "Quick heads up," he said, folding his hands on the table. "Leadership reviewed the updated spotlight agenda yesterday." I waited. "They want to streamline the second slot, shorten it to 40 minutes. My throat tightened. "Wait, shorten mine?" He exhaled through his nose. "Their words, not mine. They think the marketing initiative will require more discussion." So Marissa now had a full hour. I had 40 minutes. "Paul," I said carefully, "this cuts half the discussion time." "I know," he said. "Believe me." I pushed back. There was something tired in his eyes, something that made me realize he'd been fighting battles I hadn't even known started. "Just tighten the narrative," he said. "Get to the impact faster. Make it impossible to dismiss." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because anger wasn't going to help here. When I left the meeting room, I walked straight into Marissa. She smiled like someone had just told her she won a raffle. "Big week, huh?" she said. "Looks like it," I answered. She took a sip from her iced coffee. "Oh, by the way, your slide deck? Some great ideas in there." My blood went cold. I hadn't told her she had accessed the folder. Sarah hadn't. No one should have. I steadied my voice. "You went through my deck?" "Relax," she said, waving me off. "It's all one team, right? Cross-functional transparency, collaboration, blah, blah, blah. Except it wasn't shared with you." Her smile sharpened. "Accidents happen." There it was, not hiding anymore, not pretending, a quiet statement of territory. I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. The injustice felt claustrophobic, like the walls were getting closer each hour. She'd taken the earlier slot. She'd taken my time. She'd taken my access. And she wasn't done. That afternoon, leadership scheduled a prep call for the Spotlight presenters. I joined the meeting early, camera off. Marissa joined a minute later. "Morning, team," she chirped, all sunshine. Leadership filtered in. VPs, directors, Paul. The meeting kicked off. Marissa launched into updates about her initiative, talking like she was already giving her final presentation. Leadership asked questions. They laughed at her jokes. Then the VP asked, "Marissa, didn't you say earlier that your team had benchmark data showing operations delays were overstated?" My chest tightened. Benchmark data about delays was the core of my presentation. "Oh, yes," she said brightly. "We did some quick analysis, only surface level, but it shows a different picture than the ops data set." A different picture, a contradictory one, a weaker one, and the timing wasn't innocent. I hovered over the mute button. I didn't trust myself to speak yet. The VP turned to me. Ethan will review your dataset next week, but it might be useful to reconcile these discrepancies before the spotlight. Useful? Meaning, fix the confusion someone else created by digging into your space. I finally unmuted. Happy to, I said. My tone was even, steady, not angry, not yet. But for clarity, Marissa, which dataset are you referring to? The warehouse metrics or the vendor throughput? She froze for half a second. Half a second, that told me everything. She didn't have a dataset. She'd skimmed something from my notes, twisted it, repackaged it, tossed it out as a grenade. Oh, vendor throughput, she said. I think. You think? I repeated softly. Leadership didn't catch the tension, but she did. Her jaw shifted. She forced a laugh. Look, we'll sync offline, she said. No big deal. The call ended soon after, but something had shifted in me. Not anger, not fear, clarity. She wasn't sabotaging me because she needed to win. She was sabotaging me because she was terrified of losing, and that fear made her sloppy. 2 hours later, I caught my first break, small but sharp enough to draw blood. One of the junior analysts from marketing, quiet kid named Omar, stopped by my desk. Hey, he said hesitantly. I thought you should know something. I looked up. What's going on? He shifted from foot to foot. Marissa asked me last week to pull data for her. Vendor delays, but she didn't ask me to compare anything. She just wanted raw numbers. And then yesterday she told Sarah she never asked for that access. My pulse hit my ears. She denied it? He nodded. I just wanted to do the right thing. I exhaled slowly. A small victory. A tiny crack in her mask. But even tiny cracks change everything, especially when someone is standing on a ledge they built themselves. And I didn't know it yet, but that crack was about to become the fault line that would bring the whole thing down. Because while Marissa thought she was 3 moves ahead, she hadn't realized I had already started watching the board. The morning of the spotlight felt like stepping into a room where someone had already moved the furniture. Everything was familiar, but nothing sat where it belonged. I arrived early, earlier than usual, which meant the building was still waking up. Lights humming, vents clicking, the faint smell of industrial cleaner clinging to the air. I went straight to the small conference room Paul had reserved for prep. Laptop, slides, notes, everything rehearsed, tightened, memorized. I should have felt ready. Instead, I felt like I was watching a storm roll in from across the lake, knowing I couldn't stop it, but also knowing I wasn't going to run from it. At 8:42, Paul walked in. You good? He asked, adjusting his tie. Good enough, I said. He gave me a look, something between concern and quiet confidence. No matter what happens today, he said, make them hear you. They can ignore a deck. They don't ignore conviction. I nodded, though my mind was already drifting elsewhere, to the email I'd received the night before, the one I hadn't shown anyone. It was from Omar. Subject, you need to see this. It contained one attachment, a screen recording. Marissa's screen, her cursor, her desktop, her opening my deck, copying sections of it into a new file, renaming it QMarketing.strategy, presentation final, timestamp, 2 days ago. If she'd been subtle before, this was the opposite. She'd crossed a line so clearly, even she had to know it was reckless. And the moment I saw that video, something in me settled. Not anger, not panic. Resolve. At 8:57, we headed to the main conference room. Leadership was already filing in. VPs, directors, project leads. Someone had set out pastries no one would eat. The long table gleamed under cold white lights. Marissa arrived at 8:59. She looked immaculate. Tailored navy blazer, hair in perfect waves, smile bright enough to blind someone who didn't know better. When she saw me, her expression flickered. Just slightly. Morning, she said, voice sweet as powdered sugar on those untouched pastries. Morning, I replied. She took her place at the front of the room, her laptop connected to the giant display. Her title slide appeared, Market Acceleration Strategy, presented by Marissa Reynolds. At 9 sharp, the VP nodded. Go ahead. She launched into her presentation with the confidence of someone who had practiced every gesture, every pause, every line she thought would impress. The first 15 minutes were polished, too polished. Every word felt rehearsed to death, but leadership didn't seem to mind. Then, around the 18-minute mark, she clicked to a slide titled Operational Inefficiencies Impacting Marketing Deliverables. My slide, same layout, same chart, same data labels, though the chart had been recolored slightly, almost like a disguise that didn't fit. I felt Paul stiffen beside me. Leadership leaned forward, intrigued, and Marissa kept talking. These inefficiencies, she said, pointing to my chart, have been significantly overstated in previous assessments. As you can see. I cut her off. I didn't speak. Not yet. I just stood up. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Heads turned. Marissa's voice stuttered mid-sentence. As you can see, she flashed me a warning look, small but sharp, like a needle pricked through fabric. I didn't sit back down. She swallowed, tried to recover. Anyway, moving on. Actually, I said, my voice steady and level, before you move on, I'd like to clarify something. The VP looked between us. Is there an issue? Marissa spoke quickly. No, he's just confused about our overlap. I kept my eyes on the VP. The slide she's using was taken directly from my secure draft folder, without permission. A ripple went through the room. Not dramatic, just a shift in air pressure. Marissa laughed. Too loud, too quick. Ethan, really? Are we doing this? It's a shared initiative. No, I said. It wasn't shared. The VP frowned. Marissa, did you access his prep materials? She opened her mouth, closed it, forced a breath. Of course not. I created this slide myself. Marketing has its own data, you know. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I reached into my folder, pulled out a printed still frame image, a screenshot from Omar's recording, her desktop, her cursor, her copying my slide. I slid it across the table toward the VP. The silence that followed felt like dropping a stone into a well and never hearing it hit the bottom. The VP stared at the image, then at her. Marissa, is this real? She blinked rapidly. It's taken out of context. I was just referencing his format. It's not the format you copied, I said quietly. It's the content, and the data, and the analysis. Her eyes flashed, anger, panic, disbelief, like she couldn't understand how her plan had slipped out of her hands. You're making this bigger than it is, she snapped. It's just a slide. No, I said, and my voice was different now. Not louder, but deeper. Final. It's not just a slide. It's sabotage. The word hung in the air like smoke. Leadership shifted uncomfortably. The VP's jaw set. Marissa, he said, step outside for a moment. What? I haven't even finished. Now. She hesitated, looked at me like I had betrayed her somehow, as if she were the one wounded. Then she gathered her laptop with shaking hands and walked out, heels striking the floor harder than before. The door closed behind her. Chaos lingered in the room, thick and pulsing. The VP turned to me. Ethan, do you have the full recording? Yes. Send it to me, HR and Paul. I nodded. He exhaled, long and slow. All right. Ethan, if you're ready, you can start your presentation. It wasn't triumph I felt. It wasn't victory. It was something quieter, something sharper. Control. Because they thought I was done. I wasn't, and neither was the story. Because silence filled the room, the kind that means something's gone wrong, and I realized something important. This wasn't just the moment she fell. It was the moment I stopped letting people decide whether I rose. I began my presentation with a steadiness I didn't know I was capable of. The room had shifted. The air felt denser, quieter, almost respectful. Leadership wasn't distracted. No one was glancing at phones. No one was halfway out the door. Every pair of eyes was on me, because the chaos had already happened. What came next was clarity. I walked them through the data, the failures, the inefficiencies that no one wanted to acknowledge, but everyone knew existed. Every slide landed cleaner than in rehearsal. Every question sharpened into opportunity instead of interruption. The VP asked for projections. I had them. A director challenged the cost assumptions. I showed the long-term savings. By the time I finished, the room was still. Not because they were unsure, because they understood exactly what I was proposing and what it meant. I closed my laptop gently. No flourish, no ego, just done. Well, the VP said, leaning back, that was the most concise breakdown of operational waste I've seen in years. A few nods. Someone murmured agreement. Even Paul let out a breath, the kind people only release after holding it for weeks. Give us a moment, the VP added. Stay nearby. I stepped out into the hallway, pulse steady, not racing, not nervous, just present. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was sprinting behind my own life. Marissa was outside too. She stood a few feet away, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the carpet like it had answers she couldn't find. Her blazer looked too heavy for her frame now. She didn't look angry. She looked undone, the way people look when the story they've been telling themselves collapses. When she finally met my eyes, her voice was small. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I said quietly. I did. She swallowed hard. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I couldn't afford to fall behind. You didn't fall behind, I said. You jumped ahead by pulling people down. That's not fair. It's exactly fair. She opened her mouth again, then closed it. Her eyes glistened, but she blinked the emotion away like she refused to let it show. You know they're going to make this a bigger deal than it is, she whispered. They already did, I said. You made sure of that. Before she could answer, the VP opened the conference room door. Ethan, he said, come in. I stepped past her. She didn't follow. Inside, leadership sat in a tighter semicircle now, more focused, more aligned. Paul gave me the smallest nod, a signal. Breathe. The VP folded his hands. First, thank you for your presentation. Second, he exchanged a glance with HR. We reviewed the footage you provided. It's clear, and it's troubling. I said nothing. I didn't need to. We take intellectual property and ethical conduct seriously, he continued. We've asked Marissa to meet with HR this afternoon. She will be temporarily removed from all high-level initiatives, including the marketing rollout, pending review. My breath didn't hitch. My shoulders didn't lift. It was exactly what I expected. About your project, he added, we want you to move forward, not just with the implementation, with leading it. The room sharpened around that sentence. Leading? I repeated. Yes. We're restructuring the initiative into a formal cross-functional program. We want you as program lead. It comes with a title change, compensation adjustment, expanded authority. Paul smiled then. Small, proud, real. I nodded, slow, grounded. I accept. Good, the VP said. You earned it. They dismissed me shortly after, but not abruptly. Not like I'd been tolerated. More like I'd been welcomed into a room I'd been standing outside for too long. When I stepped into the hallway again, Marissa was gone. Not surprising, not important. By noon, the company murmurs had already started. Quiet ripples through cubicles and Slack messages. People knew something had happened. No one knew the details. But the shift was obvious. The kind of shift you feel in organizations before anyone says a word. That afternoon, HR met with her. She didn't return to her desk. Her name disappeared from 2 project calendars by the time I left the building. I didn't smile. Not because I wasn't relieved. Because this wasn't revenge. This was balance returning to a system that had been bent too long in the wrong direction. When I got home that night, Lena greeted me at the door. How did it go? She asked, searching my face. It's done, I said. And for the first time since this all started, I meant it. We cooked dinner together, something simple, something slow. No laptop on the kitchen table, no documents tugging at my mind, just warmth, quiet, the soft clatter of dishes. When we sat down, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. I didn't need her to be, but hearing it felt like someone finally let go of a weight I'd been carrying alone. Over the next week, things shifted quickly. Leadership announced the new operational initiative. My promotion became official, my badge updated, my calendar filled with meetings I'd once needed an invitation to join. And when I walked through the office now, people nodded, not like they feared me, like they respected me. As for Marissa, HR handled her quietly. She wasn't fired, not immediately, but she was reassigned to a non-strategic role, project support, no ownership of anything, no spotlight, no shortcuts. Some people learn when they fall, some don't. I don't know which of those she is. It's not my job to find out anymore. One afternoon, as I was leaving, Paul stopped me. "I didn't say it earlier," he said, "but you handled everything cleaner than most people would have." "I didn't want to fight," I told him. "I know. That's why you won." On the drive home, the radio was off. The city lights moved past slowly, like they were no longer rushing me somewhere. The tension in my chest had dissolved into something steadier, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Quiet. Earned quiet. At home, Lena curled against me on the couch, her head on my shoulder. "You really okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, and I didn't have to force it. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about a rival coworker. It was a story about the moment I finally stopped shrinking to make room for someone else's ambition. A moment where clarity replaced hesitation. A moment where I stopped being afraid to take up the space I'd worked for. And nothing about it was dramatic. It was just right. The kind of ending that doesn't leave questions. Only peace.